Welcome to the Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy, the free podcast for motivated teachers and school leaders who want to inspire their students and school community in literacy learning. Make sure you subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast player, and for more amazing literacy resources, check out the show notes provided with every episode.
Hi, I'm Sharon, and I'm the host of A Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy. In every Toolkit episode, we bring you specific resources, tools, strategies, tips, techniques to help you in your job as a teacher of literacy. Firstly, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we gather on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present, and ongoing connection to the land and cultural beliefs. Hello, everybody.
Welcome everyone to the podcast. In every Toolkit episode, we bring you specific resources, tools, strategies, tips and techniques to help you in your job as a teacher of literacy, and today also in numeracy. Welcome newcomers to the podcast, and it's lovely to hear feedback from people saying that they listen to the podcast as they go to work in their car.
Or on the train.
Or on the train.
Yes. And
some people saying it's really reinvigorating their teaching, and all those sort of messages are fantastic. But today we'd love to talk about a hot topic, differentiation. It's about how we achieve it in our classrooms. And we're going to focus on numeracy with a fantastic numeracy expert based in Melbourne, Rob Vingerhoets. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you very much, Phil and Sharon. Thank you. Lovely to be back here on podcast 2 for me. Out of, I don't know how many you guys have done, about 187 or something.
We're clocking them up. And
your maths is a little bit out there. And good to have you back, Rob. You've made the cut on the second one.
Oh, I love it. I feel special, yes.
You are a mad supporter for Melbourne.
The Melbourne Demons, yes. And no Johnny come lately. 57 years. I actually started barracking for Melbourne the year after they won their last grand final in 1964. So I started in 65.
You're dedicated.
So, yeah.
The year you were born then, Rob. Wow.
Oh, they're extremely close.
And you've been waiting all those years for a win at the grand final.
Yeah. And then we finally get in one, and it's in Perth. That's just really get stuffed. Everybody. It was still great to watch. It was fabulous. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And quite honestly, even though you weren't in Perth and we're in Adelaide and you're in Melbourne, I really did hear you from Adelaide at all of those crucial moments, because it was such a cracker of a game.
It was fabulous, highly enjoyable. It's the Bulldogs are actually my second team. I did a lot of work in the western suburbs of Melbourne, 17 years worth, and they're certainly, they've been my number 2 team. So in some ways, if we were going to be beaten, which I really hoped we weren't, I'd rather lose to the Bulldogs than anybody else. So but anyway, it was a great win. Very happy. We walked around the MCG the next day, hung scarves and took photos in front of the Ron Barassi statue at the G. So it was that's as close we got to a celebration of it. But it was lovely. Yeah, it was actually fantastic. Phil, it was a really good atmosphere. We weren't the only ones doing it. It was so it was a good shared thing.
Yeah.
And for any of our listeners who aren't Australian and who might not know what in the world we're talking about, we're talking about what we refer to in Australia as the Australian Football League Grand Final that is
it's actually called, and the game is called Australian Rules Football.
Yes.
Because there's other versions of football, but actually when we were in America, we had there were teams over there playing Australian Rules Football, and they were
each state
had a game, had a team.
Yes. New York had a small league, actually. There was
they were known as the Magpies.
Uh-huh.
The New York Magpies.
Yep.
So if anyone associated with the New York Magpies is listening, they'd have been right behind.
But very different game to American football. Very, very different.
Extremely. They both have similar shaped footballs.
Yeah.
But that's about where the comparisons finish. There's a little bit of kicking and catching, like our game, but I suppose every sport's got some aspect of kicking, catching. But they're very, very disparate games, but both great games, both spectacular in their own way.
Americans over there said to me they loved the way Australian football moves so quickly, and didn't stop. You know, it was ongoing all the time.
Yep.
They love the excitement of that. Yeah.
And our high marking is a real feature. I mean, they do some great some catching of the ball, but our high marking, where you're allowed to climb on somebody else's back and take what's commonly known as a hanger, is just one of the special parts of our game.
Now, Rob, you've done extensive work in numeracy in schools overseas and in Australia, and you focus on being a consultant and coaching of teachers and leaders in schools in numeracy, and you've been doing it for many years. And but it's all based on you being, very experienced in the classroom, isn't it?
Yes, I think any credibility that I hope I've gained or may have gained is because I guess I've backed up what I might have said in professional development sessions or professional development days or articles I've written or whatever, is by teachers seeing it in a classroom and saying, that actually does work. Yep, what
That's
he
right.
said, I see it there. Yeah, I know what he means, and I've never seen that child work like that, or how he got that much out of the grade, or I can't believe he pitched it that high, and everybody got there. I think that's credibility.
That's the key, isn't it, to have done it in the classroom? Yeah.
And I think that's an important point for any discussion that we have about, when we're talking about in classrooms. What we'll be talking about today isn't just, what does research or what does this article tell us about. It's really about what we know that works in classrooms, because not only have we seen it, we've done it. We're doing it. And not only have we done it with our own classes, but just as you've explained, Rob, in working in other people's classes and demonstrating, letting people see how those things play out when we work with any group of children and how we can all achieve those things.
And I like the idea of, we've been doing this for many years in literacy and numeracy, but we've been building on our knowledge and we've been tweaking it and maybe not doing some things anymore because they didn't work, but doing this particular thing because it does work. But doing that over many, many years means you're building on your expertise rather than completely throwing everything out and doing a whole new approach. It's just gradual building of everything. Is that how you would see it, Rob?
Yeah, I think so, Phil. It's a lot of times because I'm not attached to any university and I don't do research. My research just comes from just practical experience in a room. And as you put it, it's I'll try something and go, okay, that worked well, but it could be a bit better if I did this. Or I'll try something and go, okay, don't make that mistake again. I know where that went wrong. And it's that takes, it takes a bit of courage to do that, but at least that way in front of any teacher, whenever you're putting an idea or a notion or an activity even to teachers, I can guarantee that it works. Because, as far as a guarantee can be 100%, but most of the schools I've worked in are in pretty low socioeconomic areas, and a correlation between achievement and low socioeconomic environments, it's pretty strong. So if it works in a lot of the schools I've worked in, what's going to work anywhere? And that goes to ideas that we're going to talk about today. I mean, I've seen them, I've dealt with them, I've experienced it, I've come up with alternatives, I've tweaked those alternatives because they needed tweaking. And now I suppose you get to the stage where you go, no. I hope you can trust me with this because it works.
And it was great working with you in the last couple of weeks, Rob, in some South Australian schools, and we did it through Zoom, and I went to the school and you were on the screen, and it seemed to work really well. And we had planning groups with teachers, or another school we had a whole staff PD day. Far north is Port Pirie and up at Gawler and down at Braveview. One question that a teacher brought up was, she said, we have one day a week where we group the children into their abilities in maths, and we both sort of thought about that for a minute. And
I don't know if Rob had to think too long about
it. and then we gave her an answer. But it's our topic today, which is differentiation. How do we achieve it? And Sharon wants to refer back to an article.
I just thought that one thing, when we talk about differentiation, or when we just even mention that word, I think it immediately conjures up a whole lot of ideas for people about what does that look like, or what does that translate into. So I thought, just to anchor it, I would refer to a document, the Framework for Improving Student Outcomes, from the Victorian Education Department, or Education and Training, where it's talking about the high impact teaching strategies. And
the old hits.
Old hits. And there's actually a key word right there that I'm going to reference again, and that's that these are teaching strategies. And I think sometimes when we think of differentiation, we think we're differentiating by activities or, how we group children, but we're actually talking about, or the high impact teaching strategy is called differentiated teaching.
Yeah, which is a key point, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So the definition that they provide is effective teachers use evidence of student learning readiness, learning progress, and knowledge of individual student learning profiles to make adjustments for individuals so all students experience challenge, success, and improved learning. And when we launch into this today, Rob, that's really, you're going to be talking a lot about how that is for every child every day. That's not differentiating, right, so for this, this little group here now, I've got to, separate out into this, or, for this child here. But how do we, that's what we really want to explore, that whole notion of how is that differentiated teaching demonstrated for every child every day.
Yeah, I think it'll be the age-old challenge in teaching. It's trying to cater for the range of abilities in your classroom. Besides yard duty and teacher interviews, I know a few of those. I reckon that one would rate very, very, doing reports. I reckon that above all of those, it's how do I cope? I've got a kid. I've got a grade 3-4 classroom. I've got a kid working at year 7. I've got a grade 3-4 classroom, same classroom, and I've got a kid who's foundation reception sort of ability, whether that's in reading or maths. And it's how do you cope? And it's rightfully it's a refrain that a lot of teachers have. It's a challenge. It's an extreme challenge, but it's not an impossible task. What it is a challenge. It's a problem, and it's one that can be solved. It actually has answers. You actually can do it, and you can do it extremely effectively. I think part of the key is if not a significant part of it, is to provide your kids with open-ended tasks, which allow kids to come in at their own entry point, and that just is so much better than you preparing 3 different activities for 3 different groups, and either the kids rotate around through you, which is just, oh my God, it's just so bad. I don't even know where to start. No. And look, I don't know if they've ever worked in literacy, but they tried it in literacy, and then they said, it seems to be going not too bad. Let's do it for maths. And it was just good people here just said, you've got to be kidding. It's never going to work. And guess what? It never worked. No. I still see it. I still see people try and do it. And I was like, oh, you poor things, you've been up. Teaching's a hard enough job, and you've been up hours at night, and when you should have been, having a glass of red and watching, The Bachelor, and here you are doing this sort of stuff. Like, give you a break. You go home, think about one activity, or do it before you leave school, and know that activity is open enough to cater for all the kids in your room. That's just a great way to go for you as a teacher, as a person, and for your kids. It's just terrific. It's just marvellous.
Yes, because it's marvellous when every child, because you've geared it so that you know that every child in your class has an entry point and there is no ceiling. So, it's everybody's in and everybody gets to take it wherever they can. And we don't even have to know where that is.
Yes.
That's
That's the beauty of it there. That's a true open-ended problem. But having said that, one thing is, in case I forget to say it during the podcast, I don't aim for every activity I do in maths to be open. I use them regularly, because why wouldn't I? They're good for me, and they're good for the kids. I'm like you, Sharon. Sometimes I walk into a classroom, I don't know this, never seen them before in my life. I know there's going to be a minimum 4-year spread. No matter what classroom I work in anywhere in Australia, it can be a straight grade, and there's a 4-year spread. So knowing that every time I walk into a room, and not knowing each individual, I go, I need an open-ended task, or I need a task that's going to engage the kids sufficiently so I can engage with them and just say, hey, you've got your head right around this. How about you try this challenge? Or, okay, I see you're on the struggle a bit with this. Okay, let's have a look at this, and I can give you a hand with this bit. And that's just how we should be teaching. So every time I do an open, the minimum standard I have for a maths lesson is got to engage the kids. They've got to enjoy it, be challenged by it. Then I prefer, I don't do every task that's open, but the majority of my number work, 80%, I'd say, probably, I've never put a figure on it, but would be open. And a lot of my measurement geometry tasks, they're a mix of open and closed. But when they're closed, I always have an idea, what am I going to do with the kid who finishes this in 10 minutes? Because I recognise it's a closed task. So somebody's going to finish it in 10, and somebody's going to struggle to get started. And just know that, and then know what you're going to do about it.
And I suppose whether we're working with classes that we don't know, because we're going in, we don't know these children at all, in our situation, or whether we're working with children that we've worked with often, there's some language around that I think is, really important, that we're always noticing. As teacher, we are noticing what students are doing. And so our next decisions are based on that, rather than what did it say, on this page today that I was to be doing with children, or what was the task that was set. We need to have our eyes on our children, and I think that's what it said in the, their learning progress, and knowledge of what we see students doing. I would say that 99% of my mini lessons that I begin with students in literacy is, I bring this to you because I have noticed. I've noticed this is what we're ready for, or this is our next step, or this is our next wondering, or this is our next whatever it is. So not all. So in maths, not all, as you say, tasks would be open-ended, but if it is closed, knowing where else can we go with that? It's
just that. Look, I've at a lot of professional development sessions, I just said to teachers, it's actually a skill to recognise the task that you have for the kids that day. I know it might sound obvious, but it actually is a skill to say, hold on, is this task open? Is it closed? And then there's degrees of open, like you might have a task that has 12 answers. Well, technically that's closed, but also it's open because it has more than one answer, and it probably has more than one way to get there.
And your work during the lesson is ongoing, where you'll also introduce some strategies to them and give them the start of a strategy that they can use, and then you're actually getting in there with the kids, and you're teaching as the lesson goes on. It's not just giving them a task, an open-ended task. It's actively working with them, isn't it, throughout the lesson?
Yeah, this is one of the I think the mistakes that are often made in rooms. You can get a poster of the problem solving strategies. I use the term before open-ended tasks because I divide that off into two subgroups, so that the open-ended task includes open-ended problems, which also the inference there, if it's an open-ended problem, it needs the problem-solving strategies. Draw a diagram, make a model, act it out, identify a pattern, write an equation, make a table, solve a simpler problem. I won't go through all of them, but there's 10 of them. They're not mine, they're Charlie Lovett's. And often you can get Charlie's poster and put it in a room. You can give the kids a problem and then just say, choose a strategy. Well, unless the kids are very used to knowing what a strategy looks like, you may as well point them at the window or the car driving past.
Yes,
It's not going to help. And what Phil's referring to is I give kids a sniff of the strategy. I call it a sniff. So if we're doing argy-bargy bus drivers and 60 kids come to school by bus, and each bus has to carry the same number of kids. So how many buses could there have been? How many kids could be on each bus? So it's a great, it's a story that goes with it. But then I say to the kids, okay, you can draw a diagram. And so I give them a sniff, never a free answer, just a sniff of what that, you can make a model. I said, so you can grab your counters, it can look like this, but never a free answer. If you want to write an equation, it can look like this. Work backwards. Well, let's turn it into division. 60 divided by the number of buses will tell you how many kids on each bus, and you just give them a sniff, and then you just say, you choose. So I love this agency, this ability, or this notion that no, you choose. I'm not picking a strategy for you. You tell me which one you want to do. Off you go. Oh, and before you go, you've got to give me at least 5 different answers, 5 different combinations of buses and kids, not 5 different strategies, 5 different answers. And so, and the kids just go, well, I'm doing draw a diagram. So off you go. And so I do a quick check around the room because the kid then feels accountable. But they've been given independence. You choose. They've been given responsibility. You're in charge now. You chose it. You use it. And so, and then off they go. And it's just like, it really is terrific. It's marvellous. And I start that in reception. It's and I don't start them on one strategy. I start them on 4 or 5 because I want them to choose. I only give you one strategy to pick from because I'm that sort of controlling teacher and think you can't handle more than 1 or 2 choices, which is just patently ridiculous. Perhaps the reception kids, 4, 5 and 6-year-olds, 4, 5 and 6-year-olds will choose, and they'll choose well. And when they don't, it's not a catastrophe. I just say, well, pick another one that's not working for you, or do you want me to help you with one? And you get them going. So, and then the other side is open-ended activities where you don't really need the strategies per se. You just get straight into the problem or the activity at your own level.
A connection I made, Rob, between you and Sharon's work in literacy is we will have rich children's literature as a really fantastic model of how the English language works, and you're not frightened at all to give children the correct mathematical language, the correct equations, so that they might write something, but then you'll write below that equation in the correct mathematical way.
Oh, yes.
They know what they're aspiring to, just like Sharon's talking about with the English literature. We're aspiring to the correct English language as it is. It's not making up funny names for maths topics. It's like what's that? What are some of those funny names they use?
Look, it's like teachers come up with things like. Look, I get it.
Rainbow facts.
Rainbow facts.
Yeah. I know. We have rainbow writing. Literacy.
As I said to teachers, I've never said to the kids, but only to teachers professionally. But I've said I've never seen a 7 come out of rainbow's backside just because it lines up with number 3. As I said, the term is compatible numbers. Sooner or later they'll hit the term, and there's so many others. Look, it's that actually is the communicative property. So so use the word because that's what it will eventually be known as. And then the kid's going to go, I only know that as backwards. And so no, this is the term. So we should be using appropriate terminology from the get-go. Kids love it. They think, oh, listen to me, compatible numbers, community property, distributive property.
And what really helps them with that is you putting those key words up with the symbol next to it, so that even a 5-year-old can see the symbol and know, oh, I know what that word is because I can see the symbol there. It's a triangle. That word is triangle. Those letters must say triangle because my teacher's drawn a symbol of a triangle at the end of the word. But key words just vital, just absolutely vital that we load kids up with the language of maths. Most kids aren't beaten by maths; they're beaten by the terminology of mathematics, and you can actually really address that and do it very, very effectively. So this whole combination of things makes up differentiated teaching. This is what makes it work. It's not just having an open-ended task. Anyway, Sharon, you've got something to pipe in on. Sorry, she's been wanting to say something.
going back about 5 minutes now
Okay.
to a connection that I was
Yeah.
trying to make. When you were talking about, open-ended problems and giving strategies, we've got our literacy strategies that we'll use, whether that's we might have word-solving strategies, or we might have our comprehension strategies, or bringing these strategies to our students, to all of our students, and not saying, well, this group's ready for these and this group isn't yet, and, or they can only have one and this group, well, they might be able to have two now. Strategies are the underpinning piece, along with, they're the things that we choose and use. They're the pieces that help us get to be active in our learning. So we often talk about, the three selves. Our teaching is helping our students to be self-motivated, self-directed, self-regulated. And so without that strategy, opening them up to strategies that they can use, if we don't show them the range of things that they can choose from, then they don't know what it is that they can use.
Exactly. Yep, that's very right, Sharon. And it's because then once you go through that range, you're now offering choice, and choice implies responsibility, and it implies independence. And with that comes accountability. That's a lovely package to be getting at. That's beyond the value of that maths lesson or that literacy lesson. Yeah. That's big stuff. Charlie Lovett refers to it as the toolbox. He says, well, you've got a problem here. Which tool are you picking? Is it going to be work backwards? Is it going to be this one? You may need two, because often you can have combinations of strategies. Yeah. And it's not a bad analogy. It's for open-ended problems. Which are great, and it's a day you don't have to worry about the range of abilities. If I do argy-bargy bus drivers and I make it for 60 kids, it's so easy to work that problem up, and not just always by just going to a harder number or a higher number, but certainly working it down with kids. And I've had kids who work it out for 12 kids that go to school by bus. So somebody works out, you can have 2 buses with 6 kids, and I'd normally use act it out and perhaps make a model with that, and they go, you can have 3 buses with 4. And then I said, well, okay, you've got your head around this, why not go back to the original problem of 60 and see how you go? So and at the same time, I've got a kid who's come up with a pattern or a formula for working it out every combination. So I up the ante with that kid with an extending prompt, and all of a sudden that kid's highly engaged. So it's it's a good way to go.
So all this really, Rob, is honouring the kid or the child and saying, I know you can learn. I know you could be, with this particular problem, you could be coming in at there's a high level or at a,
but you will have success. Yeah. But basically, my thing is when I walk into that lesson that day or whatever lesson, wherever, it's you will have success.
And I'm trusting you. I'm trusting in you to do this. Yeah, that's a big part of it, isn't it? That.
Yep, I trust my task. I trust you as human beings, and I trust myself to get around to you. So,
so what's in the thinking of a teacher who says, I'm going to group my kids and I'm going to put them into 3 different abilities and test them at the start of the unit, and then put them into the 3 groups and then teach them with these different activities? What's in their thinking about the child and how they learn, do you think?
Oh, look, sometimes it's just it's fear. I don't know. I really don't know how to cater for the range of abilities. This is our way, and they'll go to it, and that's often driven by just the fear of catering for that range of abilities. Often it's the lack of knowledge of resources that are there. Like I don't invent all my open-ended problems. There's books. I make up some of my own because you actually get good at it after a while because you're just so used to working that way. But I understand for teachers who aren't consultants, who, that's what I specialise in, there are really good resource books out there that are full of open-ended problems and open-ended activities. So it's not like you can't get them. Maths 300, there's other websites that you can go to that are full of open-ended problems and activities. So, but sometimes that lack of awareness of those can hold a teacher back. And sometimes it's just, it's I don't know. Sometimes it can be just a controlling thing. No, I want it this way, and because the not knowing where the top group are going to go, and the not knowing how I'm going to cope with the bottom group terrify me. So I'm going to just control it by having 3 groups with 3 tasks.
And when you do that, there are some negative things that can happen out of that.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, very.
Yeah.
One is stressful for you, the teacher, to be coming up with those 3 tasks when one would have done the job, and the other is just the effect on the kids. The effect on the kids is very real. In a classroom, or if that whole grade level is doing it, it's worse. I'd happily let you know what's evil about streaming today, and we could fill another podcast, because it's no good. It's just no good. But for all sorts of reasons, I know no good is not exactly a research-driven response. I have it all. Actually, you can't see my desk in front of me because we're doing a podcast, but because I don't work at a uni, but I have all these articles from people way smarter than me, Hattie and Doug Clark and Joe Bowler. These people are just world-renowned experts in education, and there's a consistency here. They all think it stinks. Yeah. I love the people, like Hattie, and we do Hattie. We follow Hattie. Then Hattie tells them the streaming is just like, he doesn't even mince words. He said this is a shocker, and then they go, but I think he got that part wrong. We're just going to ignore Hattie on this one. We believe him in everything else, but no, his evidence is clear. It's a negative impact. So streaming only works for your very top kids, and then it's marginal. The rest, they actually go backwards. Yeah. They go backwards. You actually are negatively affecting your kids. That's academically. What you're doing for them socially and emotionally, somebody needs to point it out and just say, no, I don't care what you're doing. You should stop that, because it's ethically not right.
No.
Yep.
So in the high-impact teaching strategy, differentiated teaching article, so, Hattie talks about the effect size for differentiated teaching. So in the article, and I'm kind of jumping down to we've talked a little bit about, the strategy is demonstrated when the teacher, and you've already talked about, sets open-ended tasks that allow students to work at different levels and paces. Mm-hmm. And we'll come back to more of those in a moment, but I'm just going to jump down to where it says this strategy is not demonstrated when the teacher sets the same work for all students. Now, I think that's one that people sometimes misunderstand. Because when they see, sets the same work for all students means, I must have to have groups.
No, it looks like I can see the anomaly in that. Actually, I've got that. I've printed that out, and I've got that in front of me. My reading of that, and I don't know what the equivalent. I guess I do know what the equivalent would be in literacy, but in maths, that's here's your worksheet.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
And same in literacy. It'll be.
Yes.
Well, actually, it will be, here's your worksheet, but some people will still see that as, okay, well, then I need 3 worksheets, 3 different worksheets.
Yes. But here's an extra worksheet for you because you're the top group.
Yes, yes.
But with an open-ended task, you're actually giving them the same open-ended task.
Yeah, every kid in the room's doing argy-bargy, bus drivers, every kid in the room's doing get me to 1,000.
Yes, or in literacy, every child is reading, but they are reading the text that is, and that's where the differentiated teaching comes, because I have chosen the text that I can read with accuracy and understanding.
Yeah.
And this is the one that is right for me. Yeah. And so I'm getting to do that work. So I've actually got everybody doing the same task. They might all be reading at the same time. But I don't need to have them in groups then to get better at that. I just need the book is doing the differentiation actually, and what they're then bringing as the reader. So just the same in maths, you'll have, same task, but how we enter into it and the strategies we're applying, choosing and using, mean that I come in at my entry point using what I know and take myself further because it's open-ended. It means I can go exploring. I can go...
And the ability of the child's mind to go way further than they would in a very closed task is amazing. Same in literacy and in numeracy, they can their mind can really go to where it wants to go. Whereas, because that's the other thing I think is a bit of a problem out there at the moment, where we think some people think we should do this little bit of learning and they can't go on to the next bit of learning until they've got that first bit of learning. Whereas an open-ended task can allow the child to explore going way past what you think they might be learning.
Absolutely. I don't know if you were in the room with me the day at Catherine McCauley. We were doing a problem with the preps, and one girl she'd chosen to make a model. So it was an open-ended problem, and I just said, what you've done here is this, and this, these two things. You added those, so let's put that in a bracket. And then you took away this, and this is one of the answers you got. And she said, "What's that?" And I said, "It's just a bracket. It means you do it first, that you get this bit organised, and then once you've got an answer to that, you got that number. So now you can work on it with the other number." And she's just gone, "Oh, righto." she's gone, "Oh, righto, Mr. V." She called me back later and said, "Mr. V, this is how I use the brackets." She totally nailed it. It's always about the context. Learning isn't linear. Everybody wants it to be, but my God,
it's only linear. It's only linear on paper.
It's only linear on paper. Somebody has to write it in a row or something. A curriculum needs to be written in a row. I get that. But it doesn't. That's not how kids work. It's not how humans work. They bump up. They drop back 3 steps. They go forward 8 and then realise there's a gap back here that I need to fill. Filled it. Now I go back to step 10 where I was along the line. But, it's not linear. It's all over the shop. And some people can't handle that all over the shopness. It needs to be, especially in maths, Sharon. I suppose it could be typical in literacy too. But in maths, it's like, no, this needs to happen. I'm not moving on until everybody's got this. Well, good luck to you. That's not going to happen. Yeah. It's and the open-ended activities, the one I was talking about before, is just a simple one. It's get me to 1,000, and it's so easy. I just put a lot of numbers up on the board, get me to 1,000, and a lot of the numbers are simple to work with. You've got a 500, you've got a 2, you've got a 600, you've got a 400, and no worries. But you've also got 11.5, negative 10, 0.75, 17.5, and just numbers that 10,000, 8,862. Like, where in the hell would you use that? But I never know. I only put that number in to see what happens, and then kids use it. But at the top end, just by putting in a few of those, they're often gone. And if they're not, and I come across a kid and just say, "Hey, your next one has to have one of those hash numbers, or your next number has to have 17.5 in it. Let's see what you can do." And at the other end, my explicit teaching, which is at the point of need, is with a kid when I'm saying, "Okay, let's take this problem back to 100, and let's show you on the meter ruler here, and let's do a simpler problem." So but that kid's looking around going, "I'm doing the same activity as everybody else."
Yes, yeah.
How good's that?
And I just want to catch that little piece that you just said about, the explicit teaching at the point of need. Yeah. So, once we've got our students in the process of being the active, doing the active learning or the active practice or whatever we want to call it, the independent
and using
part,
their strategies.
That is where, the teaching hasn't stopped. We don't have to have a, 50-minute maxi lesson, to get them into this. We want to open the doors for them on this task. We want to let them in, and then We're roving. We're on our feet. We're out
that's
there.
The word. I call it mobile for maths because I like a little bit of alliteration.
Yeah.
It's on the loose for literacy or something.
That's good. That's good. I'll coin that one.
But it's that. But the word is that you chose is right. It's the roving, and all of a sudden, the roving results in the explicit teaching because the roving's either going to be, hold on, I'll do 2 minutes with this kid, and I've got her. I've got her started. 2 minutes, 30 seconds with this kid, and I've got him going.
Yeah.
Actually, you three, come here. I've spotted you're all making the same misconception, or you all have the same misconception. Quick, come out here. We'll fix it up. Or it's everybody stop. Everybody stop. Looks like you're missing this bit of knowledge here, kids. And I'll do a 2-minute, 3-minute clinic with them. And because it's inefficient now to go explicit teaching one-on-one, I need to do explicit teaching as a group.
Yep.
I worry here in Victoria.
Small, flexible group.
But but the interpretation of explicit teaching that may not be the case in SA. That's you up the front telling the kids what you know, and it's so dangerous. Frankly, I detest the term because it's so mystifying. To me, it can be one-on-one. That's when it's the most effective because you can give immediate feedback, and it's brilliant. But it can be pairs, it can be a small group, it can be the whole grade. We should have a very flexible definition of explicit teaching.
We've come to the end of part 1 of our podcast on differentiated teaching. How do we achieve it? Stay tuned for next week when we tackle part 2. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. To make sure you don't miss any literacy learning tips and insights, please subscribe to our show on your favourite podcast player. At Q Learning, our literacy specialists draw on over 30 years of teaching and international consulting experience to deliver world-class learning solutions. We equip, empower and support teachers to become their authentic selves. To find out about upcoming webinars and about how Q can help you and your school, visit qlearning.com.au. And you can get even more amazing teaching resources right now at teachific.com.au. Stay tuned.